Hello viewers, welcome to this video. Right, in this video we're going to be looking at how to install a cluster on Ubuntu 20.04, right? So this is my Learn Kubernetes series, and the very first video is about how to install a cluster on CentOS 7 machine. So that was done about a year and a half ago, back in November 2018. Basically the steps are going to be the same, but few viewers asked me they wanted to install Kubernetes cluster on Ubuntu. So I picked up Ubuntu 20.04 because that's the latest one. To be honest, I don't really mind about the underlying operating system, whether it's CentOS or Ubuntu or any other, or a mix of CentOS, Ubuntu on other distributions, but you shouldn't really care about the underlying operating system. So, but anyways, in my Kubernetes GitHub repository, so I've got under docs folder. So usually I used to have one install documentation that covered the CentOS 7 installation, but I renamed that to, it used to be install cluster.md, so I renamed that to CentOS 7 because now I've got another documentation specific to Ubuntu 20. I checked this in about a month ago, but I just wanted to do this video. But anyways, the steps are going to be very similar apart from the commands that are specific to Ubuntu that's different in CentOS. So I'm going to be deploying a master and a worker node. So in my case, my IP address are these ones. So basically these are my VirtualBox virtual machines running Ubuntu 20.04. And I've assigned 2 gig RAM and 2 CPU to the master node, which is the recommended minimum. And for worker nodes, 1 gig and 1 CPU. And if you look at the steps, it's going to be very simple and very similar to the one that we've got in the CentOS 7. If I go to CentOS 7, it's again the same set of steps, but the commands are slightly different. Let me put that aside and let's get this going. I've got my virtual machine set up already, so I'm going to log into my kmaster and kworker. So that one, master and worker. SSH, that's my master machine. And down in the bottom window, I'm going to log into the kworker. Type in the password. So we're going to be running few steps on both master and kworker nodes. So I'm going to be running them in parallel. So I'm going to turn on the synchronization. So if I just run a command, it's going to be run on both the windows, both on master node and on the worker node. So basic setup that we need to do both on master and worker nodes. And then there are a couple of steps that we need to do just on the master node, like Kubernetes cluster initialization and deploying the Calico network. That's it. And on the worker node, we just need to run one single command to join that node into the cluster. We need to be running all these commands as root user. So let me become the root user. And the first thing is we need to disable firewall. And I think I've already got it disabled UFW status. Alright, the vagrant box that I chose came with firewall disabled, but if you've got it enabled, run this command UFW disable to disable the firewall. So we need to disable swap. So if I do swap on -s, and you can see I've got a swap partition enabled, so we need to turn that off. And if I do that and do swap on -s, so we've got swap turned off, but that's not permanent. We need to remove that from etcfs tab as well. So if I do grep swap etcfs tab, so there's an entry here. So if I now reboot these machines, it will mount the swap partition again. So we need to remove that. It's a little set command to remove that from the etcfs tab. And we need to set few kernel parameters. So I'm going to run these commands here. Alright, so that's set in the configuration file. So next time you reboot the machine, these kernel parameters will take effect. But in order to make it effect in this session, so we are going to run this command sysctl ---- system. That's done. And now the interesting part is to install the Docker engine. All right. First, let's install certain prerequisites. All right, that's done. And now we're going to add the key for Docker. Alright, that's done, and now we're going to add the Docker repository, and once that's done, we're going to install Docker. Alright, so I'm installing a very specific version of Docker here, 19.03.10, and if you look further down, I'm also installing a very specific version of Kubernetes components because I know this combination works. I could have left it as the latest Docker C without specifying any version, but there's no guarantee that the latest version of Docker and the latest version of Kubernetes components might work well. So I wanted to be sure that the combination that we choose here is working. So I've chosen this version of Docker and Kubernetes version 1.18.5, and I will try and update this documentation periodically after testing the Docker and the Kubernetes version. All right, so we've added the repository. Now we're going to install Docker Engine. All right, Docker is installed. In Ubuntu, once you install Docker, the service will be enabled automatically and the service will be started. So let's have a quick look. Systemctl status Docker. Systemctl status Docker. As you can see here, the Docker service is running and it's also enabled. But in CentOS, once you install Docker, you need to enable the service as well as start the service. But in Ubuntu, it gets started automatically. Okay, so now comes the Kubernetes setup. First, we're going to add the key and then we're going to add the repository. All right, so do apt update. That's done. Now let's install all the Kubernetes components. Cool, so we got all the components installed. So now I'm going to turn off the synchronization because the following couple of commands I will need to run only on the master node. So we are now going to initialize the cluster. So I don't need to run that on the worker node. So I'm on the master node, turned off the pane synchronization, and I'm going to copy this command. And make sure to substitute your IP address, the IP address of your kmaster, your master machine. Okay, so in my case it's 172.16.16.100, but in your case it might be different, so make sure to use the right IP address. All right, so if you look here, I've installed version 1.18.5, but I don't know why it says using Kubernetes version 1.18.6. There's a bit of inconsistency there. I'm definitely trying to install 1.18.5. Okay, so our cluster is initialized. So now we need to deploy the overlay network, which is Calico. So that's done. Finally, we're going to run this command to generate a token. So that's the command, the last line, which we need to run on the worker node to join the worker node to this cluster. All right, so back in the worker node, I'm just going to run that command, and that will join this worker node to this Kubernetes cluster. All right, so that's done. So I'm gonna log out of the kmaster and kworker. So now I'm back in my host machine here. Now I've got my kubectl binary downloaded. Now we need to copy the kube config, the Kubernetes configuration file, to my host machine. So I'm gonna make .kube directory under my home directory, and I'm gonna copy etc kubernetes admin.conf from the master machine, which is 172.16.16.100, to my .kube directory under my home directory as config. Okay, so that's done. Let's do kubectl cluster info. Cool, so that's cluster seems to be running fine. The API server is running on port 6443 on 172.16.16.100, which is our master node. Right, kubectl version -- short. All right, again it shows version 1.18.6 as the server version, and if I do kubectl get nodes, there you go. So you can see the version is 1.18.5 here, but I don't know why it's showing. I've always had this problem. I don't know why. I can't explain. All right, let's try and have a quick Nginx deployment. Kubectl create deploy Nginx -- image Nginx. Alright, kubectl get all, container is getting created. Let's also expose it. Kubectl expose deploy Nginx as type node port. Kubectl get service. Okay, so that's our node port 30644. So now if we go to the browser, we should be able to access Nginx welcome page by going to either master or worker node IP address on this port. Let's see if the container is up and running. Kubectl get all. Cool, so our Nginx pod is running. Let's try and access it. All right, so the IP address of my worker node is 172.16.16.101 : the node port is 30644. Cool, so that's Nginx welcome page. I think I've come to the end of this video. I don't think I've got anything else to show. And give this a try. If you've got any questions, I will be happy to help. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. I've got more videos coming. I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.